All right, good morning. So today I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent, not that I don't always. Um, so been thinking lots about the whole idea of um, robotic labor, I guess, right? And I have some ideas about this. Now, I'd say this is more like a thought experiment rather than necessarily like a wholesale, like practical sort of implementation plan in terms of, how this could work. But I kind of like the idea of, if everybody sort of had their own individual robots that kind of took over for it, basically, right? So, like, say, like, if you had a certain occupation, and then now it's like, okay, robots are taking your occupation. Well, you would get the right to have your own robot replace you at your place of work in your industry. And then you would be responsible for like programming and maintaining that robot. Now, obviously there's going to be industries where this is not particularly feasible. But hear me out for a minute still, because I think this is a neat way of going about it. One of the problems with the idea of robotic labor is that you have, again, this like concentrated means of production, right? So if we're no longer relying on people to run the factories and, work in the shops and, drive the trucks and stuff, right? Then rather than sort of the wealth being distributed through wages and what have you, it would just get concentrated in the hands of very few, right? And that, again, like we discussed before, that doesn't really lend itself well to a harmonious, productive, and happy society, right? Well, maybe productive, but prosperous, no. Like only for a few, right? We don't want everyone to be, prosperous and all that. So, if and okay, so let's say, for example, like governments come in and they introduce regulation like this, right? It says, okay, everybody gets like first crack at having their own robot replace them in the workplace. Now this could be pretty interesting, right? Because I think one of the sort of one of the images that I think we have in terms of like sci-fi and stuff, right, is that there's just going to be like all these like robot clones, right? And they all look the same, more or less, right? You'd have different models, but you have a lot of like copies of the same thing, right? Now, if everyone were to have their own individual robot and be responsible for that, then you could have like a lot more variety in terms of like the types of robots that we'd see, right? Because people would like design them with their own personality in mind, right? And same with the programming, right? So, these robots could, in theory, like communicate, and that's assuming that communication would be part of the job. That's not necessarily part of every job still, but, you could put in your own personality, your own data set that reflects sort of like your unique experience and the things that you've done in your life. And then we'd have like this crazy sort of like second population of robots that's still reflective of all the sort of unique traits that we have as humans, but they'll be doing the work. And then that could actually be really interesting, because then obviously the benefit of automated labor is that it's supposed to free up our time to do other things, right? Now it would be really, I know maybe I'm having too high hopes here for humanity, but it would be really great if, rather than everyone just like binge watching Netflix for the rest of their life, they use that free time to learn new things, develop new skills and what have you, right? And then they could use those new experience that they're having and then implement that into their own robots, right? They could program them, and maybe as their personalities evolve, then maybe the design of your robot changes over time as well too. You could swap out the colors or what have you. Now, on a less surface level, kind of way of thinking about this. This would also be a way of distributing sort of the means of production, and then also giving people an opportunity to still contribute to, the economy, and still, reap some sort of reward for it, right? So if you're responsible for your own robot, for its maintenance and making sure that it gets to the factory on time or whatever, and then you would collect your robot wages for the work that it does. And that could be a way to go about things. Now, again, you might want this to be subject to regulation still, where, you have maybe this idea of like, you have one man, one robot type of rule, right? So that people can't just start to monopolize robotic labor. Because I think that's the real danger in it still, is the monopolization of it, right? Because there are not going to be that many companies who are building these things. Now, I do have also, some positive feelings about seeing open source humanoid robotics making a bunch of strides over the past couple of years. So I've seen at least 3 or 4 different projects that are releasing, fully open source software, hardware designs of humanoid robots, right? That have sort of like the base things that you need. And yeah, so if these get monopolized, right, under only a few companies, then I think that creates problems, basically, right? Because again, we're not democratizing the means of production. And I hope I don't sound like I don't want to sound like a communist when I talk like this still. Because I don't know, that's often a let's save the ideology talk for another day, actually. So so anyways, so yeah, this is sort of the thought experiment that we're running with right now. So what would a day in the life of having your own robot worker be like, right? So you wake up in the morning, your robot's made you pancakes and coffee, cleaned the house already, right? Because they don't need to sleep, right? Maybe it spends an hour charging in the charger, or however long that takes, right? Then jumps on the bus to go to like the robot factory, and puts in its shift or something, right? Making widgets. Then it jumps on the robot bus back, and that bus is for robots only, by the way. Still, the robot's not allowed on the human bus, and humans not allowed on the robot's bus. I bet you at some point along the line, when because people are going to anthropomorphize. Oh God, I always struggle with speaking that word still. When people give sort of human characteristics to robots, or AI for that matter, and sort of treat them as such, then that's definitely going to lead to like some sort of things like, we should not segregate the robots. So yeah, wait for that. But let's just say for now, like, that's how that works. And then, you go about your day, right? Maybe you go out and you go to school, or you go to, I don't know, whatever thing that you want to do. If you're a musician, you go to the music studio. You're an artist, you go to the art studio. If you want to make video games, then you go to a developer lab or something, right? If you want to, and then just, pick your industry, pick your niche, right? And then, you get out of the house and you go do that stuff, right? Maybe you just go play sports all day or whatever, right? Then y'all get home. The robot gets home a little bit before you, cooks you dinner, sets you up for tomorrow, and wash, rinse, repeat still, right? Now, do I think this is going to be the thing that we definitely see? Probably not, but I think it would be cool if we brought in elements of this idea into the real world. I think the important things here to consider are ensuring that we all have a fair crack at owning robotic labor, right? owning some of the benefit from that, right? Rather than letting that be concentrated in the hands of a few and being monopolized. And whether or not this happens through sort of an unregulated free market, or it happens through sort of government regulation enforcing sort of like limits on robotic ownership, we'll see what works. Probably different countries will try different things at the beginning, and then we'll have to run some experiments, see what works, and go from there, right? So yeah, definitely interesting stuff to see there. And you could actually make this, you could do this the same for, not just for the robots, but also for AI, right? So let's say, for example, that, okay, so right now in AI, we have like a lot of base models, right? Or foundation models. And these are kind of like generically trained models on large data sets, right? They will have, layers of fine tuning on top of that. But let's say everybody can take those models, and then we find a way that makes it easy for everyone to sort of inject their own personality, their own experience, and their own skills into these models. And then these models are sort of like the same thing. Like, you can use your own model to serve, I guess, whatever services would be needed of the things that you used to do as a human. So let's say if you're like an expert in history or something, right? Well, all the AI models know lots of history, but they don't have your opinions, right? So you would program your specific opinions and, maybe your viewpoints into the AI, not the robot, into the AI. And then, that could be available. Maybe you're booking sort of like AI generated podcasts, but it's like your AI or something, right? And this, maybe not podcasts. I think probably we're going to get away from sort of static content and into things that are more dynamic. I don't know if the sun might be too bright there. So maybe like you'd be like maybe like taking royalties for chatbots where your model is being used. So people want to talk to your chatbot that has your opinions and your knowledge and your experience specifically, right? Because there is even in a niche like history, where like history is like kind of done and dusted for the most part. I mean, sure, there's still discoveries and things, right? But there's still lots of opinions, right, about how, when, and why things happened and what have you. So, and I mean, you can extrapolate this concept into other domains as well, right? Let's say you're an art expert in a certain field of art, and you could program not just like a chatbot or something, but you could program diffusion models that would generate art specifically in your style, right? And then take royalties for every time one of these is generated, right? So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities and for us to go about this in a way that allows everyone to benefit and allows everyone to contribute, right? So if we put what we know, our skills, experience, knowledge, our opinions, things like that, if we embed that into the AI and into the robots, and we can do that on a continuous basis, because again, if we are freed up from a lot of the monotonous work that many people have been doing, then that would actually give us more opportunities to learn and develop new skills and develop new opinions and be more creative on our own time, which in turn could further improve the AI and the robots, right? So yeah, just some food for thought there this morning. I think that's all for today. We'll see you in the next one.